Athens. Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, sorry about the rough start.
No, you've been great. For now, we've worked together and we've killed the water sale. Little background: the Modesto Irrigation District has very historic, very prime rights on the watershed of the Tuolumne River, and those rights go back pre-1914, which is the best kinds of rights one can have. We get about 300,000 acre-feet of the Tuolumne River watershed runoff each year into our system. In a wet year, we get a little more. In a dry year, we get a little less. But it averages about 300,000 acre-feet a year. Of that 300,000 acre-feet, we irrigate, we sustain our aquifers, we supply the city of Modesto, and we keep the river healthy. Sometimes we have input from the state and federal government as to how much water we use for keeping the river healthy and other environmental needs. Well, the city of San Francisco has about an equal allotment out of the Tuolumne River watershed that they store and capture up in their Hetch Hetchy Reservoir, which is above our Don Pedro Reservoir. And they're reaching the end of their bounty in terms of their allotment out of the Tuolumne River watershed, and they'd like to keep building houses and keep developing the Bay Area and keep creating property tax rolls, I guess. And so they came to Modesto, and they're out looking around for additional water. A few years ago, they came to the Modesto Irrigation District and asked us if we would consider selling them some water in secret, without public disclosure or without any kind of public review of alternatives. Our district started putting together, the Modesto Irrigation District, under the purview of its then directors at the time, a very specific plan to sell Hetch Hetchy water from our allotment to the city of San Francisco. At first, the plan was for 2,240 acre-feet to supply a specific development in the Brisbane area. And then they began discussing a larger water sale that was tied into that would eventually take the total acre-feet delivered to San Francisco to 27,000 acre-feet. Now, that's a lot of water.
I was going to say, if we get 300,000 acre-feet a year, speaking of Modesto, and they would have gotten close to 30,000, that's like 10%.
That's 10%, yes.
That's a lot.
And they would have gotten a first right of refusal on any additional water that we had decided to sell under the 50-year term of that agreement. So we have 300,000 acre-feet, but a lot comes off the top. It's just like running a business. You got your overhead. Well, when you run an irrigation system from the Sierra Nevadas all the way down through the farms and cities here in Stanislaus County, you lose water. You lose water to evaporation, you lose water to percolation into the ground, and you lose water to spillage into the river for environmental causes, as well as what you spill at the end of the system for, necessary waste or discharge. And so when you add it up, we really get down to just a 200,000 acre-feet very quickly. We've got 58,000 acres of farm ground in the district currently. We like to supply that farm ground with about 3.5 acre-feet per acre. So if you call it 50,000 acres that actually get irrigated by the district, then you're looking at 162,500 acre-feet going to farming.
Okay, so we're down to 40,000 acre-feet.
Now you're down to 40,000 acre-feet.
Extra?
And it's not use the term extra, because of that 33,000 is going to the Modesto Water Treatment Phase 1.
Okay, so now we're down to 7,000.
Now you're down to 7. And we've built Phase 2, we just can't operate it yet. The minute Phase 2 comes online, we've got another 33,000 acre-feet going to Phase 2. So we're already negative.
Yeah, we're in the hole now.
And the agreement, the treatment delivery agreement between the city of Modesto and the Modesto Irrigation District states clearly that when Phase 2 comes online, we know we're going to be short, and any shortages are shared proportionately between agriculture and the city. And so agriculture's got its 3.5-foot base allotment. The city has its 33,000 and 66,000 acre-feet of water. So we're going to be about 10 to 15% short in a normal year, just there.
Well, we've heard Reed Smith talk before that we didn't have any water to spare.
We don't.
And when you talk about it like that, it's 300,000, then 100,000, and then 162,000, and then we're down to in the hole.
We're in the hole already, and there's major impacts coming.
And that's before the sale would have gone through.
That's before the sale.
Okay.
We are already, now the district in its pie charts that it published to the community, and it spent hundreds of thousands of your ratepayer dollars sending to you in the mail and putting in the Modesto Bee The Modesto Bee had the courtesy to put it on the front page, directly taken as the district represented it. They never showed treatment phase 2 in their models. They didn't show FERC, which we know is 24 to 27,000 acre feet currently that they didn't show.
Explain what FERC is.
I'm sorry. We license our Don Pedro Reservoir from the Federal Energy Resources Commission.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because it's got a hydroelectric function there, it was put under that commission as the lead agency for a license. In addition to the Energy Department of Energy, we also have input coming into that licensing program from the Department of the Interior, where they will ask us to provide environmental water.
I'm sorry, I'm smiling. All I can hear is that cash register.
Yeah,
Cha-ching,
that's what you should be doing. We should have that as a sound effect.
Yeah.
That's really perfect.
Yeah. With every acronym comes another,
or like dollars.
Exactly.
That would work.
Yeah.
So every time we turn around, we've got the Federal Energy Resources Commission that's already taken 24 to 27,000 acre feet of our water that we no longer have discretion over. We can't put to beneficial use in terms of the environment, I guess, but we can't do it in terms of farming or sustaining our community in the urban area. We have, it was almost surreal. We were in one of the MID board meetings and they were talking about their energy planning. And we know that hydroelectric is an important part of our energy planning, not here in our community, not just because of the number of kilowatts we can generate from the falling water up there at the Don Pedro Reservoir, at Hetchy Reservoir, but also because it's very convenient power that we can kind of have what's called spinning reserve. The expensive power we pay for as ratepayers is the power that's needed at 4 o'clock in the afternoon in September or August when it gets very hot and everyone kicks the air conditioners on. And the district might have to go out on the market and buy peak power. Whereas an average kilowatt might cost them 8 cents or 4 cents, peak power kilowatts might cost them 21 or 25 cents. And then that cost gets delivered back to you in your energy bill. Well,
which is a whole nother story because I have also heard that MID did buy some power from before, and they do have power in reserve.
Oh, I've learned to call talking about the water issue at MID peeling the onion. Mm-hmm. I can sit here for a half an hour and go layer by layer and just cry in front of you. If we go into all of MID, I don't have a good analogy for that. Well, I think it involves a shovel.
Well, you started out months ago saying for people to bring pitchforks and torches.
We're going to have an organized protest. Pitchforks, torches, and shovels just so we can get to the issue to protest it in 3 minutes. It's another issue. So we can unravel MID, and we have the full hours or close to it. So we can go down that road today if that's what you want to do. But on the water side of things. On the water side of things, they're talking about their energy planning. I said, well, gee whiz, if you sell this water to San Francisco and they take it when they want it, not when it's convenient for us to run it through our spinning reserve, well, actually, it comes out above our hydroelectric plant, so we get no power out of it if we sell it to San Francisco. Did you model that into your power plant? Yeah, we get nothing from it in terms of resource for our community at all. And they said, well, no, actually 27,000 acre feet isn't very much water when you look at it in terms of hydroelectric.
Then why were they willing to pay so much money for it?
But we did look at, in our power planning side of the deal, we did look at what impact if the State Department of Water Resources come down to our river restoration requirements, what those might do to us in terms of our energy planning. And that's a lot of water. Well, 24,000 acre feet didn't make it. 33,000 acre feet for phase 2 didn't make it into the model. The river restoration water that might come down from the state any year now, this year, next year, never made it into the pie charts that the Modesto EB published on their front page, that MID spent hundreds of thousands of dollars sending to its ratepayers to convince them that the whole water sale was a good idea. None of that made it to their pie chart. And the Modesto Bee, now Reed Smith, who's a good friend of mine, and he's a published hydrologist and agricultural researcher, who's been taking a look at these numbers very carefully, and you've had him on here a few times. He's usually on here with me. And I met with the Modesto Bee, and we presented all of this to them, piece by piece, fact by fact, with documents. And the opinion editor, Judy Sly, said, well, can't some of this just be incompetence? On whose part? I don't know. I don't believe it was incompetence. I believe there was a narrative that was established by the Modesto Irrigation District Board of Directors. They hired Mike Lynch, a local political consultant, for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and Emerson can tell you more about that than I can.
We'll take questions from the audience a little bit later.
to go out and sell this narrative to the public. And the Modesto Bee, I have to tell you, Athens, remained entirely complicit with the whole strategy of establishing a false narrative and sustaining that false narrative in an attempt to push the water sale through. We brought to them very, very well documented, clear fallacies and falsehoods in the district's published materials, and they wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And so, fortunately, we killed this thing. We fought against this thing. We went to the board meetings. We built a very strong coalition. We brought the city in. We had some supervisors on our side. Many, many groups that heard about this thing and understood it. I mean, in one experience, I went to the Latino Community Roundtable to listen to Ruben Villalobos present, and he was very fair. He offered to go question and answer, and kind of he and I both gave our 5-minute opening introduction, and I did it in the form of an answer to a question, but it was still 5 minutes. He requested my rest of my answers be 1 minute after that, but we got our job done. I believe that by the time we left the Latino community, you were there, community roundtable event.
I have it on tape, actually.
We'd swayed the group in our direction. This was the same. We presented in front of the Sylvan Club. We presented in front of Rotary. Paul Wenger debated Ruben Villalobos in front of Rotary. I think in most groups where we were able to present a good, complete picture of what this water sale was all about and to challenge the district narrative, I'll call it the Mike Lynch, MID, Judy Sly, Modesto B narrative about what this water sale was about.
Well, you brought up a name, Ruben Villalobos. Who is he to MID, and why were you in a question-answer debate with him?
We started this off with some opposition back in the late part of 2011, early part of 2012, going to the MID board meeting with what was probably for the board an unfamiliar and overwhelming amount of opposition. And
I was there a few times. Yeah. It was the best show in town, believe me.
Well, I think you'd appreciate it. You did, but
it was interesting seeing you approach the podium there to discuss with the MID board.
They deserved most of what they got. I regret little to none of what I said, and I'll stand by most everything that the audience said. There's some interpretation of the board that, or the Modesto Bee, that when you address these boards that you have to have complete decorum, that you can't show passion, that you can't speak for more than 3 minutes, 30 seconds more than 3 minutes without being interrupted by the chairman, Tom Van Groningen, or the lawyer, or Alan Short, whoever wants to jump
or the
on
guards.
there. It's kind of a freebie.
They had 2 armed guards there the day that I was there.
Yeah, one day and there was
and
never...
And a third guard that wasn't armed, but 2 that were armed.
Yeah, I never heard a foul word at the Modesto Bee, at the MID chambers. I never heard a threat. I never heard a personal insult. I did hear a lot of passion. I did hear a lot of opposition. I heard a lot of people telling they're idiots.
Well, but, it's interesting what one person may call name calling, another person is just calling the truth. And it goes back to that old civility thing. Must I, say you're telling the truth in order to be civil, or can I call you a liar?
Well, exactly. If I'm going to ask you a personal question, or not like the color of your car, or a personal choice of yours, and I insult you on that in a public arena, then I think that's out of line. But if you're in a public capacity, and I challenge your position on an issue in your public capacity, or your competence, or your acumen, or your record, that's fair game.
The record is another onion.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go to the MID, if you want to go to the... We went through some
the
budget.
Financial, I was going to say the budget.
Oh, my God. Let's stay with water. Let's just stay with water. I think, and a point I really want to make on your show tonight, Athens, is it's your show. When we first started this little journey in fighting the water sale, we looked for partners and we looked for people to help us. It was being invited onto your show first as a candidate for the MID board race last year, and where we talked a lot about the water sale, and then as just a citizen in opposition to the water sale. It really, really came to life how important the alternative media in town is. We had a newspaper. We have a local newspaper that has a problematic hegemony on the news in Modesto. The Modesto, we advertise our poinsettias. My family has Duarte nursery poinsettias. We advertise our poinsettias in there. Heck, that's where you get people to come out. People come out to buy poinsettias. They said, we saw you in the Modesto Bee. I've been in the Modesto Bee. They've actually treated me fairly. They haven't criticized me in a personal way at any time. They endorsed me for my candidacy, which I should have known would have led me to lose. But nonetheless, they've been generous to me on a personal level. I don't think they've been generous to the public in terms of getting the right kind of information out there that was perfectly objective or even close to objective for that matter. But they are the strongest news organ in town, and we had to peck at them from a lot of directions. We had to come on your show and get your viewers informed. Emerson covered this on Eye on Modesto quite a lot. Carmen Sabatino got into this with a number of shows on Voice of Modesto. Eric Kane on his Valley Citizen published quite a lot on his internet website. Dave Diamond had us on his show several times to talk about this issue. And what was amazing is, all those names and faces I just mentioned, well, not everybody in the audience might, but I can promise you they're not all Republicans, they're not all Democrats, they're not all Libertarians. This is a diverse alternative media we have here in Stanislaus County, and we should be very thankful for it, because these were the folks who don't have the big building, they don't have the newsprint, they don't have the morning delivery every doorstep every morning, and they've got to earn every inch of success they have in their audience, and it's only through having the best truth and bringing in the people that will give the most objective information.
Yeah, and we earn our reputation by credibility.
It's all you got. You got nothing else. And it was the alternative media in town that really gave us the audience to attract people. Because, of course, the day they were going to do the water sale, the Tea Party showed up with a lot of help, and they were very helpful through every step of this also. They were almost a media of their own. They kept the issue rolling quite well. But then even after that kind of went away, a lot of the folks who listened to your show and probably engage Emerson's and Carmen's and some of the other alternative media in town started showing up at the MID meetings. So instead of having 1 or 2 people in each meeting, as they were always used to, they were having 6 or 8 people always show up. Mm-hmm. And I really believe Larry Bird, the gentleman I ran against last year for the District 5, or was it District 1 director? I should still know that. But he and I have worked very closely, and he was against this water sale very, very early on. He had a principled opposition to it as soon as he understood, anything close to a complete set of the facts. Paul Warda came to dislike it over some time, but he came to dislike it in a very principled way. Nick Blom, I hope his opposition to it was principled. It came very, very late in the game, and it came after a lot of political pressure, so I don't know if it was a political opposition or principled opposition, but he ended up on our team, and we'll take it. And then Tom Van Groningen and Glenn Wild, the other 2 directors on MID, they only flipped because they didn't want to be the 2 guys standing outside the box when this thing went down 3-2. So the only reason this was a 5-0 vote was because Larry Bird, Paul Warda, and Nick Blom, pretty much in that order, decided to vote against it.
Well, as I said in the beginning, I was gone for 13 days and 12 hours, and this all transpired. It's like, I've been sitting and watching the egg boil for a year, and then all of a sudden it got served up with a full course meal while I was gone.
Well,
so what was the defining day that it actually I missed it all.
I don't have the date. I know Larry came out of the meeting Tuesday, I think 3 Tuesdays ago now. And we building up to that, for the audience, get a little background. MID and the city of San Francisco had a draft contract that was written back in January. It was dated January 24th. It was never released to the public until April. So in April, they presented the contract that they drafted.
Did you ever wonder what else is not published? But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Now that's the shovel. Let's back to the onion. So they published back in April. We finally get to look at the contract. Mm-hmm. Dave Thomas, another important player who helped us a lot in this, from the Stanislaus Taxpayers Association, went through and made a list of 16 flaws in the contract. And I was teasing at one point, I think my dead Portuguese grandmother could have found 16 flaws in this contract. I mean, this was a bad contract that wasn't negotiated. It had to have been handed to us from San Francisco in a take it or leave it kind of way. And so there's a lot of pressure against that contract. It had the first right of refusal. There was no off-ramp after any amount of time, although there kind of attempted to be one. There was a lot of vague language that I don't think anybody understood. I mean, when you draft a contract, you draft a contract by the laws of the state of California. So if you have to have that interpreted, you know that it's the state of California legal system, not the Massachusetts or Delaware or Colorado legal systems that interprets that contract. Well, this contract was drafted by the laws of the state of California and pursuant to the city charter of the city of San Francisco.
Well, what's interesting is I've read a lot of legal documents, and very rarely can I actually understand what they're saying. But I read part of this one. It's like, I understand it. Who was this written by?
Yeah. It was.
It didn't seem like a legal document to me.
No, it was
like somebody,
and
maybe
so,
a high school assignment or something.
So documents are written in legalese because if you have to go to court and defend them or defend your position under that document, it has to be very clear. So the whereas, therefore, hereas, that'll mean something. It's a term of art legally. If you write a document that's vague, then whoever's got the bigger attorney wins. And I believe in California, San Francisco's got bigger attorneys than MID. And so I think a vaguely poorly written contract
Tim
that's a little
O'Loughlin might not like that.
Well, Tim O'Loughlin's not a very big attorney.
But he is involved with the Oakdale Irrigation District too, which we need to touch on that in a few minutes.
We will.
How are we doing on time? Okay, we got plenty of time.
So anyways, this contract came back, and it was, our guys rejected it, and they said, no, it needs this, it needs that. Even the Modesto Bee kind of came in and said, there's some specific flaws here we have to fix. And so they sent it back to San Francisco again. At the end of the day, San Francisco was buying this water to plan for drought. San Francisco has the same watershed we have. We have drought when San Francisco has drought. If they're going to have a contract for water from our system to plan for their drought, we're not going to have that water to plan for our drought. So there was a fundamental disconnect that this contract made no sense. We could not sell them water to deal with their drought conditions and not be able to, and without jeopardizing our ability to deal with our drought conditions here in Modesto. And so they weren't able to close the deal on the contract. And finally, a few of us who were opposed to the water sale started encouraging the board, don't worry about negotiating the contract. Don't vote this next contract up or down. Simply, as a board, withdraw the directive you gave to management to negotiate a water deal with San Francisco. Just withdraw the directive. Don't wait for the contract to come back. Finally, a few weeks ago, enough of the board members, Nick Blom and Paul Warda, were just tired of being put on a little hamster wheel by the lawyers and wait for the new contract and wait for this and wait for that. They finally demanded to see what the status of the contract was from management. And when they saw that there hadn't been significant progress in closing the gaps in the contract, they simply withdrew the directive to management to pursue the deal entirely. And so management no longer had the latitude to continue negotiating with San Francisco. And that was a sign when it went down 5-0 that this deal was dead. Now, this is the first book of Harry Potter. That's all this is.
I was going to say, because is that a done deal, or it's done, or do we still have to peek under the carpet and see what was swept under there?
Well, this monster is going to come back. We have an incredibly precious resource, and we have a bountiful, in relatively speaking in the world today, we have a bountiful resource of water here, and we can do a lot with it. We've built our community on it. We've built our farm community on it. We've got the biggest canneries in the world, the biggest wineries in the world. We've got, the biggest nurseries. With my family's in the nursery business. We've got the biggest ag equipment dealers in the world. We've got packaging. Go out to Beard Industrial Tract or around the industrial parts of this county, and you can see what we've built around this water resource. Modesto has its challenges, but what we have that is good is here because we have this water resource, and we built a community around it, in my opinion. And San Francisco wants to keep building. They want to keep expanding. They want to keep creating congestion and housing and sending us their smog. If we want to support that, we can transfer our water from us to them and enjoy more of their smog blowing into us.
It's interesting, while I was gone, just as a little an aside here, while I was on the East Coast, I picked up a newspaper, and it actually, California made headlines on the East Coast about the different resources that we have here. And the headline was, the state of California, their counties, California's counties need to share all their resources with each other because all the county's resources belong to each other. So I think that maybe San Francisco might have that idea about our water, and of course they're willing to share their smog too, as you said. So
Yeah, well, if they always say, what is democracy? It's two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for breakfast.
yeah, we have a Democrat coming up soon.
Well, no, but I mean, but in principle, whether you're talking about, hey, they've got all this resource, why shouldn't they share some of that with us? Whether that resource is money or land or power or water. Hey, when you've got a little bit and they've got a lot, sharing's a great idea. What California counties ought to be pulling together and doing is developing more resources. California is making a conscious choice to be short of water. This is not some dearth put upon us by nature. We have the Sierra Nevada. They sit opposite the Pacific Ocean. The Pacific Ocean is the largest source of marine moisture in the world. The Sierra Nevada is the largest mountain range in the world, sitting there ready to wring the sponge, and it does wring the sponge out of the storm systems that come off the Pacific Ocean. We have the best geologic situation in the world to have the most abundant water resources in the world. We quit building water resources 40 years ago. We didn't quit advancing our agricultural industry, which has gone from it's $30 billion and growing fast right now. We didn't quit building our cities. We didn't quit building our economy, although it seems like it sometimes. We kept advancing, choosing not to add water resource infrastructure.
It's interesting because I've had several guests on the show since last August, a year ago August, talking about this very issue, that there is talk about tearing down dams and not rebuilding, or what do you call it, the retrofitting.
Yeah.
And creating more storage.
Yeah.
So,
Shasta Dam is our big boy. That's our big dam in California. That dam holds 6 million acre-feet of water. Comparatively, Don Pedro holds 2 million, and Hetch Hetchy, the one they want to tear down up in the mountains, holds 300,000. So an expanded Shasta is what, 20 Hetch Hetchies? Shasta Dam was engineered originally during the Depression to be twice as big as it is. It has the engineering in place and the water floodplain in place to be a 12 million acre foot reservoir.
it's huge. I've seen it. I've
Yeah.
actually toured the dam.
It's half as big as it should be. It should be twice the size. Probably 3 times the size and footprint, twice the capacity. You can go up another 200 feet. The foundations of it are strong enough to hold another 200 feet of cement, and we could take Shasta to 12 million acre feet. That water would enhance our environmental causes. It would enhance our agricultural industry,
So why
and
don't
it would. We can't agree to do it.
Is it the wolves and the sheep thing again?
It's the one of the players that the Modesto Bee brought into this dialogue was the Public Policy Institute of California. Now this is a San Francisco Bay Area think tank. They've got our favorite daughter Carol Whiteside sitting on the board with them, as well as some other. Ellen Hannock is their big water specialist over there. And if you remember the article Modesto Bee did with a little spigot on the front page, that was just a Public Policy Institute of California download into our community of what their perspective was. The old saw for the water thinkers was that agriculture isn't a highest and best use of water. Urban is the highest and best use of water. And agriculture is wasting water. So if agriculture would only use micro irrigation,
what are we going to eat?
yeah, well, but we can eat just as much. We just have to quit wasting it. So we need to go from flood irrigation to microjets and sprinklers and irrigation technology.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, that the farmer next door went to that sprinkling instead of the flood.
Yeah.
And I don't know about how it really works, and maybe you can explain to me, but it seems like there is just not enough water going back down into the ground when the flood irrigation is not being used.
Well, that's true. There's many advantages to flood.
So the aquifer is, is it getting depleted?
Yeah. If you use the theory that you're wasting water by flood irrigating, well, then you're calling recharging our aquifers a waste of water. I don't believe that recharging the aquifers, which is what you're referring to, is a waste of water. But nonetheless, if you compare a irrigation technology user who puts on the right amount of water, which may be as much or more than you put on flooding because you're irrigating every day or every 3 days with an irrigation technology system, you're going to get more crop off the same amount of land. You're going to use equal to or greater than the amount of water you used to use because you're redlining your orchard all year long. Your orchard is at maximum hydric capacity, and you're going to just produce every bit of food you can produce. Whereas on a flood irrigation cycle, you might flood it every 2 or 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going to actually redline or produce more food with the same land resources with an irrigation technology system. But you won't use less water. And that's been established now to a point where the big water thinkers over the public policy in the state of California have dismissed and said, okay, well, irrigation technology is not going to free up the water from agriculture, so what's next? Well, a couple years ago it was, well, they should quit growing low-value crops. We shouldn't grow rice in California. We shouldn't grow cotton in California. We shouldn't grow alfalfa in California. Well, we have to subsidize these crops. Why would we use our water to grow these crops? Well, today, rice is profitable. Cotton is profitable. Heck, they're growing cotton all the way up through Merced now. I mean, cotton is profitable. We're compressing alfalfa in the Imperial Valley to put it in cargo containers and ship it to Asian dairies. That's how valuable alfalfa has gotten. I mean, if you own a horse these days, it used to be $8 a bale for hay was a fair amount to pay for hay.
I used to have a cow.
So $5 was a good price for hay.
Uh-huh.
You pay hay. You buy $20 hay now for a bale of hay. It's ridiculous what's happened to feed prices. There are no cheap ag commodities anymore. So we can no longer say that flood irrigation is wasteful and farmers should give up water to the city and adopt irrigation technology. It doesn't work. We produce more food with irrigation technology, but we don't use less water. There are no low-value crops. Food resources are constrained worldwide, and all crops are profitable. The only crop that isn't profitable are meat crops, or dairy crops, animal crops, where you have to buy corn that the government wants to boil into ethanol and burn in your gas tank instead of feed it to animals. So the animal guys in agriculture are hurting because all horticultural crops have become more expensive than they've ever been before. So they are profitable. So now we don't have that saw anymore. So the big thinkers in the Bay Area don't have any more rhetorical devices to justify taking water from agriculture to the city. They're out of rhetorical devices, so now they're just taking it. They're just coming to Modesto, communities like Modesto. I believe in this process, somebody corrupted somebody. I mean, if you look at what the value of this 2,200 acre feet of water is in developing condos in the Bay Area, so we were going to get $1.5 million a year for the district to sell this water off the Bay Area. 2,200 acre feet of water can support 2,200 acres of development in the Bay Area. This could have been 4,000 condominiums at $2 million to $4 million a piece. You look into $20 to $40 billion worth of real estate value created by moving this 2,200 acre foot amount of water from Modesto over to the Bay Area, where the only constraint to development is water availability. So if we let them crack our piggy bank and take water for this development now, this Brisbane developer, whoever, whatever he wants, and we let them create $20 billion or $40 billion in real estate value by getting that water from us, we will never in this community be able to protect our politicians from the corruption that will ensue as they come for the next 2,200 acre feet or the next 2,200 acre feet. It's one reason this fight was so important is we not only stopped this sale, but we stopped the business plan of proposing a development in the Bay Area and coming to the Modesto Irrigation District and taking a few of our boys out to dinner and hitting this little podunk town up for its water resources and moving it over. It wasn't just about being constrained or having less water than we used to have. It could have meant the absolute devastation of our community if this pattern were to ensue.
You wanted to talk about the OID, the Oakdale Irrigation District. Let's see how much time we have. Yeah, did you want to touch on that a little bit?
I do.
Okay.
So we talked about this being the end of the first book of Harry Potter, and the next book's coming.
Right, yeah.
So I think this is just like the last 5 minutes of the movie where the monster rears up one more time and you have to hit him again.
Okay.
But
I haven't seen it, so don't spoil the end.
Whatever this is, well, it's just the same in every horror movie.
Okay.
But, so this is where the monster jumps back up, and
like Halloween
a
5
Fatal
or
Attraction
something.
where they had to knock
Oh
him back in the
yeah,
bathtub,
okay, that one I have seen.
I think this is more like that. So OID has the same water attorney, Tim O'Loughlin, as MID does. They are proposing to us that they take and transfer to MID through our canal systems are linked together in some points, that they run into MID 2,400 acre feet of their tailwater at the end of their system. And in exchange for that, we allow the Brisbane developer to take 2,200 acre feet of Hetch Hetchy water into the pipe all the way over to
You're
Brisbane.
kidding.
Except this time, we don't get the money. OID gets the money. Now, to understand how...
I'm sorry I'm laughing. It's just like...
No, it's wow. And when asked why we would do this, the answer from the MID management was to create goodwill with OID.
Well, from what I could see when I was there, it seemed like there was plenty of goodwill going on when they had somebody come in and say that they had done water sales before. And it was almost like they were reading from a script.
Oh, they were.
I don't know if they were, but it seemed that way.
Yeah, during the water sale, Alan Short thought it would be wise to bring in the OID folks and tell us how wonderful it had been since they'd done water sales and they sold water to the city of Stockton, which is, in my opinion, similar to us making water available to the city of Modesto. I don't necessarily have a problem with our irrigation district water going to support our local urban communities. Mm-hmm. It's a balance we have to strike, and that's a tug of war we'll do, but we do have to make sure our cities and our farms are well taken care of by our local resources. But in the case of OID, they'd just done a cash sale to the city of Stockton for 20 years, and they'd done some cash sales to the city of San Francisco. And they came in to present to us that they'd been able to give rebates to all their farmers and build infrastructure and this and that. Well, the Modesto Irrigation District isn't always that bright. And this goes back to the shovel. The next week, they had the Irrigator magazine on the front desk as part of their exhibits and handouts. So I picked up the Irrigator magazine and went to page 1. They had a picture of the OID guys standing and smiling on the front of the magazine. So reading through it real quick during the meeting. Wow, it says explicitly in the article that MID management is distributing to the audience here at the next board meeting that the reason OID had money coming out of their ears was because their hydroelectric plant they built up at New Maloney's paid off its bonds. And when the bonds were paid off, when they built the thing, they had a 30-year bond and a 30-year deal with the city of San Francisco, or PG&E, to sell the power to them cheap. It was a good rate back 30 years ago, but it wasn't any longer a good rate. So in 2001, when those bonds got paid off, they also were able to resell their power on long-term agreements at very high prices compared to what they'd been selling at. So they had no bonds, and they had all this great hydroelectric power coming onto the market when they were able to sell it very favorably. And it said explicitly that was the source of revenue with which they rebuilt their infrastructure and with which they provided rate relief and rebates to their farmers in the district.
Not a water sale to San Francisco.
So once again, we presented that. There was a picture of me in the Modesto Bee where I actually had some documents in my hand. My mom called it my give him hell shot. And, that was what I was saying. Guys, right here on your front desk, you put an article that completely refutes what you had guys come in here and tell us last week. And this was common. This kind of comedy, if you're on Inside Baseball, was common with the MID through this whole thing. I think I said, you told us last week that these guys, every farmer in the district got a rainbow and their own unicorn because you guys sold water. It says right here, it was because you paid off your power plant, were able to resell the electricity much more favorably, and that was your revenue source. So yeah, the OID and MID, there's been this happy little relationship between them. They're very independent. They're separate districts with separate issues. They have separate choices to make.
But I have a question. Why is Tim O'Loughlin the legal representation for MID and OID?
He got the work. I mean, he's a private contractor. He's a gun for hire.
But doesn't wouldn't that be conflict of interest somehow?
In some cases, he should recuse himself, and he certainly shouldn't be setting himself in the middle of a deal between MID and OID, to where he's playing both ends of it. I mean, that doesn't seem appropriate at all.
Because it's like MID, okay, they killed the sale, okay, but OID will go ahead and do the sale, kind of whispering and I'll do it over.
They'll say okay.
That's right.
Yeah. So. There's a whole bunch of wrinkles. We'll come back and talk some more. It's your show.
Come on over, Emerson. Don't go anywhere. He's got to get set up and everything. So we'll get Emerson set up. It'll take him 10 minutes. So.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No,
well, good. Good. Let's go then. So right now we've got to tell OID no, and I believe the votes are there on the board at MID. I think the vote.
So now do we need to go to OID's meetings?
OID impacted parties from Oakdale Irrigation District should be telling OID that selling water to San Francisco, in my opinion, known opinion if it's true, just creates more congestion and pollution for our valley. When we make water available to San Francisco, they build houses, they increase congestion. 28% of our fog blows in of our smog here in the valley comes from San Francisco.
And we are fined, aren't we? Because
we
of
are
air
fined.
quality and
Yeah. If
Yeah.
we took San Francisco's smog out of our equation, and it's just a geologic fact that it blows in on us, nothing they can really do about it, but make less of it if they would, please. We pay for it. We're paying higher vehicle license fees. You're paying about $6 every time you license a vehicle each year to pay off the fine. When employers come into our region, they have to build their factories and build their plants and meet higher air quality standards than employers do in the Bay Area. So it makes Modesto less competitive. It's a higher cost place to live because we're paying fines for their smog. It's a higher cost place to set up a business and create jobs because our employers are having to meet higher air quality standards when we set up than they do in the Bay Area. So it would be nice if if the air quality control boards would look at the Bay Area and say, hey, you're impacting their smog, they've got problems. You need to go through the same efforts to reduce your air pollution as they're going to, since they're a downstream impacted party. Of course, we don't have the votes. The Bay Area's got the votes. The Bay Area's got the Dianne Feinstein. They've got the Barbara Boxer. They've got the Nancy Pelosi. We don't have the political clout to assert what I think would be a very reasonable resolution, which is, hey, you guys got to do the same stuff we're doing.
Well, it would be nice too if they would help us pay those fines, but I don't see that happening.
They're not gonna. No.
So where do we go from here?
Where do we go? We stay vigilant. I really believe that this is going to be a generational conflict. We're going to have to stay aware every time that MID board thinks about selling water. They're going to. One of the most important things is Paul Warda got health problems. He's a good man. He's got health problems. He'll be stepping down this year. He will not run for re-election. Glenn Wild was for this water sale. Him and Tom Van Groningen were the two votes that were just lock, stock, and barrel to the bitter end on this whole water sale. They're up for re-election next year. We need to make sure that we get good business savvy, local people who are committed to our local issues here, people who respect the farming industry, whether they're farmers or not. We need people who are here to protect the farmers, and people with good, solid business backgrounds that can balance the books over there at MID, because their budget meetings, we were going to talk about that. We didn't get to it today because we got on water. Their budget meetings are a flat-ass hoot. I mean, holy cow. They had Jimmy from the finance group over there a few weeks ago.
Jimmy?
Telling us how he went up to SMUD, and they had this new, they're not going to benchmark against the other districts and see how they're doing versus the other districts. They're going to move beyond benchmarking and go look at what SMUD's done to control costs. SMUD's controlled costs, and they've cut $10 million out of their budget last year. So I asked Jimmy, hey, that's great. Where were the big pieces of that $10 million? You know, they cut $10 million out of their operating budget. Where were the big chunks? You've got to look at that first, right? Well, they were able to delay capital projects for a year in a lot of cases. Well, if you're running a capital-intensive enterprise like a power company, if you delay your capital budget items, you're just putting them off. That's not operation savings. There's changes I can make at my business that cut my cost of doing business. Buy new software, that hire less people, be more efficient, use less energy. Those are operational cost savings. Not buying capital equipment, and let my old stuff get a little rusty or a little older, break down a little more before I replace it. That's a separate set of decisions you make, but those are not operation savings. And so he was representing that the biggest savings they had were on the capital budget side of just delaying projects rather than actual operation savings. And he was representing these as things that would impact MID's long-term operating costs. Because as a ratepayer, if MID spends a nickel, you pay it.
Oh, yes, I know. And what's interesting is in my travels of the 13 days and 12 hours, I actually met the gentleman in the Denver airport who was a representative who brought those smart meters to Modesto. And I said, we're not happy with those, and told him why. And he says, it's a billing problem. I said, perhaps you should come back and teach the MID people how to correct their billing, because we went from a $75 MID bill to $450 in 1 month with their smart meters.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll have you back soon. Thank you.
Athens, always good.
And thank you very much for that wonderful compliment about our local media here.
Yeah,
So,
I think you guys played a critical role on a critical decision. I'm very thankful for it.
thank you. Don't go away. We'll get Emerson here on the air.